Welcome back to Media Talks TV with your host Tony J. Just wanted to do a two-part episode to celebrate all the great fathers out there. This is going to be a segment of retrospectives, and we're going to look back on some things concerning movies. I know it's Father's Day, and funny thing about Father's Day is nobody is talking about fathers, discussing fathers. Maybe we live in a country that does not value fatherhood anymore like they used to. And I feel like there's a shift in the culture in America that doesn't appreciate fathers the way that they appreciate mothers. And I had some time over the weekend to look at two of my favorite movies. You might remember them. But one of the movies where fathers are negatively portrayed would definitely be the movie Kindergarten Cop. And also another favorite, one of my other favorite movies, uh, Mrs. Doubtfire. And these two movies are very, very distinct and maybe, I didn't really catch it when I first watched those two movies. When I was about maybe 5 or 6 years old, uh, I was allowed to watch Kindergarten Cop and also Mrs. Doubtfire. And they became the two movies that I actually got to watch on VHS at the time. And, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Robin Williams at the time, they were superstars. But, as in Hollywood, we don't even realize some of the things that kind of go under the radar. We don't catch the undertones of certain plots. And the thing about the thing about Kindergarten Cop was it on its surface, it looks like a great family fun movie where kids can laugh, but the tone of the movie is weird and disjointed. Now I'm gonna tell you why. Because at first, the movie starts out as, you know, the main character, Mr. Kendall, or Detective Kendall, ends up locking up Chris, which was the antagonist of the movie, for a murder of a drug dealer. And what's odd about the movie, it turns into a movie of a guy chasing after a bad guy. And then as time goes by in the movie, it starts with him busting in on one of their witnesses that identified the killer, and then her being a witness to Chris murdering her boyfriend to now we got a situation where he's going undercover as a kindergarten teacher to get close to the child in Penelope Ann Miller's character in the movie and the kid. And it was odd because it starts out like, okay, Chris murdered somebody, and then it moves into this sappy love story as time goes in. And instead of Detective Kendall doing his job as an undercover cop, he ends up becoming a teacher. So then most people will call that deep cover, because once you get lost in your cover, you kind of forget what your main objective is. And so Kendall comes in, he's the kindergarten teacher everybody loves. He's defending kids from abuse, but at the same time, he forgets what he was there for the intended purpose for. And as the movie goes on, you're looking at this town of Astoria. I think it was Astoria, Oregon, not Portland, but Astoria, Oregon. And Astoria, Oregon, and this is what the odd thing about the setting. It's the place of the largest amount of single mothers, right? So Astoria is like this place, this magical place where only single mothers exist, right? And he flies to Astoria because they're trying to catch Chris, because they think he's going to kidnap his wife and kids and get him and take the kid and move him from there to wherever they're going to take him. I forgot where they was going to take him, but he was going to take him away from his mother, kidnap him. So he goes there. He plays the kindergarten teacher, and he looks for the kid who's the kid that Chris was going to kidnap. Middle of the movie, he starts to take a liking to the kid's mother. She finds out his cover is fucking blown at the county fair. And then before you know it, they take a liking to each other. They get deeply involved with each other, and nobody really truly knows what's going on between them, because she doesn't want to blow his cover. So now she's involved now. And it turns from an undercover cop to a fucking love story maybe 90 minutes into the fucking movie. And I'm thinking, like, is this an action thriller, or is this a fucking love story? So I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I'm like, hold up. He ain't supposed to get involved with them. You're a cop. He falling in love with with Chris's girl. It's like he just literally squeezed up on his girl. So now I'm looking at it and I'm like, damn, I ain't even think about that. It went from an action movie to a love story of this guy saving this kid to now he's trying to play stepdaddy. and fall in love with his mother, even though that's Chris's ex-wife, basically. So then the story moves in, and then of course we get to the part where he identifies his son in the school. Chris walking around the hallway with the principal. He ends up discovering his son in the classroom. Goes out to the car, gets a lighter, burns the fucking school down, and then kidnaps his kid. And that's the craziest thing. He did all of that just to get his kid back, just to get custody of his kid. And then Kendall, Detective Kendall, springs into action because somebody kidnapped it, because Chris kidnapped his son. They hide out, they have a shootout. This is where the plot thickens. He holds his kid hostage. Kendall drops the gun. Of course, if you saw the movie, you know what the hell happens. I will always say the ferret was the hero in the movie. I don't know. It's kind of like a comedic twist, right? Because like the ferret was the fucking hero in the movie because if the ferret had to bite Chris, bit Chris, he would have he would have shot Kendall. And this is the funny thing about the kidnapping scene. He said, "Oh, he's my kid. He's my kid, Kendall. You get your own damn son." It was funny. It was funny as shit. And I was like, I don't know what to think about it. He's a cold-blooded murderer and a drug dealer. He already killed his witness, so he couldn't. So he got away with the murder because he killed a witness through a drug overdose. And then the thing about it was, it's one of them movies you look back on and you think about, okay, did we demonize Chris too much? Because I'm looking at the movie and I'm thinking, this is a father that in Hollywood they try very hard to demonize fathers. And I didn't think about it when I watched this movie that the whole plot, the real subplot of the whole entire movie of Kindergarten Cop was Chris getting his kid back. And there was like it seemed like it was like they were trying to dispute custody battle through a shootout. And the funny thing about that movie that didn't sit well with me is Kendall might have been the hero, but he was also unethical in how he did things because you ain't supposed to be squeezing up on a suspect's ex-wife and fall in love with her ass, but you did anyway, and you stayed, and then you just became the teacher now. You forget that you were a fucking cop and that you flew there to catch Chris and the suspects and arrest them. That was the whole point. But that's what's so crazy about that movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger is basically the nigga fucking your baby mother. You know what I'm saying? And the weirdness of it all is like, okay, you came there, and people forget the later half of the movie, what the intended reason why he was there in the first place, which didn't make sense, you know. So after the incident, it was like after he shot him 3 times, after he shot Chris 3 times, the ferret is looking around. You notice if you freeze frame the movie, the ferret is looking around. He's holding the ferret after it bit him. And he's like, "Oh, you get your own goddamn son. He's my son." And he's like, the ferret comes out of the kid's sweater and bites him. And it's like he's like, it was the only thing that made him the hero in that movie. Like that ferret was the damn hero. I think when I watched that movie, I wanted a ferret after that. I wanted a pet ferret because I thought ferrets were cool back then. Like that's the movie that made ferrets cool. Like yeah, you may sleep all day, but you bite motherfuckers. And then the ending was weird. You're a cop. You came back to become a teacher. At the end, and it was like he was coming back for his girl, the one that he fell in love with. But I'm like, hold up, ain't you from California? So you're still a cop. And that whole entire movie threw me off. So I was like, damn, I couldn't I couldn't fathom rewatching that movie after so many years. But I was like, okay, basically they just demonize the father. And I know everybody else is going to have a different spin on the movie, but the movie itself, it just highlighted to me. I didn't even know, looking back after 35 years, that that movie was really demonizing fatherhood and then putting people in the mode of being worshiping single motherhood and stepdaddies, which is crazy. But then I think the worst one, which was really kind of blatant, was Miss Doubtfire. And Miss Doubtfire was good. It was funny. It was humorous, but it was incredibly sad too. And I didn't even realize how sad it was because I didn't understand when I first watched it because I was young in the '90s when I watched Miss Doubtfire. So I didn't understand this whole thing about divorce and co-parenting and custody battles until I watched Miss Doubtfire, and that taught me a valuable lesson. And I still continue to watch Miss Doubtfire because um Miss Doubtfire was one of those movies where it put a human face to this whole thing about the dissolution of marriage. It was humorous and it was funny. I think uh Sally Fields did an incredible job playing Robin Williams' wife, and I felt like she could have got an Oscar for that because of the fact that she was this career oriented woman. She represented the women of the '90s and late '80s where they were all career oriented. She cared more about her career than she did about being a mother, and it was like she didn't like the fact in the beginning of the movie that he threw one of her sons a big birthday party. And it was crazy because I was like, parents try to do their best towards their kids, but he threw a party that was over the top, and she got pissed off and mad at the fact that he got mad at the fact that this man threw his son a big birthday party because he was turning 13, I believe. And now it's like, oh, well, Daniel is not this person that takes things serious. And she made him out to be the irresponsible one in the marriage when he was trying very hard to be a father, and she demonized him for it, for being irresponsible and unserious. And then the whole plot of it, which was good, he had to play an old woman just to see his kids because he hated the custody battles that he was going through with his wife. And then towards the end, he couldn't keep up the charade and everything just fell apart. But the good thing out of it is he got a decent paying job. But then he sacrificed losing his kids in a full custody battle. And it was crazy because I was like, this sounds like Robin Williams' life. But it sounds like the lives of a lot of men who get divorced. It's like, like I said, Hollywood demonizing fathers and making them look like the bad guy. And that was a horrible thing, you know. And I'm not gonna go verbatim and explain Miss Doubtfire because I expect everybody saw Miss Doubtfire at some point. But then there's another movie, and I'm gonna add that bonus in, but I'm not gonna go too much into it. Of Kramer versus Kramer is another movie that I didn't like, even though Meryl Streep did wonderful in that movie, and Dustin Hoffman, and I love that movie. I think I never got over that one. But what was so crazy about those is you have these movies out that don't portray men in a good light, and we still have this issue, especially in a feminist society where men are portrayed as being dumb, irresponsible parents and stupid asses. And if you look at the culture, and this has been written so many times, you notice in the media, dads are looked at as being irresponsible, stupid, and dumb. That's why we get Family Guy and Homer Simpson as being the portrayal of the great TV dads of all time. But there was a time when TV dads were considered, father knows best, and all these, and Andy Griffin's show, and Good Times, and all these you know responsible, very very um maybe firm fathers, and we had that. And then by the time we get to the 2000s, we get all this stuff about fathers being demonized in the media. um Another one I'm going to throw out there too, the Frank Mitchell one. And I'm going to talk about this in depth in a later video. But I notice when it comes to black TV fathers, you have, for us, you have James Evans, you have Cosby, Heathcliff Huxtable, and then 90s Uncle Phil and Carl Winslow. But then Frank Mitchell, which is a very big part of the culture, they get demonized. That episode where we saw Moesha's father confess to parenting a child outside of their marriage, I thought was the worst disgusting one. And it when it comes to black TV fathers, they don't put a lot of respect on Frank Mitchell. They kind of create this facade, and then the facade fell apart towards the end of the show. And even to this day, in the last 25 years, there hasn't been real black fathers on TV like that. But what was so what was so disgusting about that portrayal is it kind of reached deeper into something that isn't often talked about with black men, and that's the whole thing about infidelity and fathering children out of wedlock, and stepping outside of the marriage and having a baby as a result of a infidelity. And those things were explored in Moesha. But thing about it is, especially with black fathers, were often the stereotypes of all this, we abandon our children and have babies all over the place that we don't take care of. And that's often been the stereotype for a very long time. But of course, people in Hollywood like to run with that because they think that that's the narrative in our neighborhoods. And that's why they give us plots and shows that mirror that type of mentality. But I had to say, you know, with fathers, that it's very important that we fight those types of stereotypes and make certain that despite all the media negativity, that we continue to do our jobs and make sure we're not representing the worst aspects of black fatherhood, you know. But this has been retrospectives looking back on old media and discussing the implications of narratives in today's world. I'm Tony J. This has been another Media Talks episode. Again, I want to wish all the fathers a happy Father's Day, and be sure to hug your sons and daughters and appreciate what God has given us. It's a blessing and a privilege to be a father, but that privilege can also be taken away. It's been great talking to you guys. Happy Father's Day, and I'm out. Peace.